into the stretch, and it's a late to catch. Midnight Bijou, her fearsome foe, comes at her on the outside, and these two lay it on the line with a 16th to go. A late on the inside, Midnight Bijou on the outside. They're coming to the wire. Who's it gonna be? Oh, it's so close.
All right, welcome back to Racing Rundown. I'm back after a long absence. I do once again apologize for that. I had to have a couple people fill in for me. And unfortunately, due to that, the Breeders' Cup preview series will unfortunately not happen this year. I got the worst case of laryngitis naturally a week before the Breeders' Cup, so I couldn't record, and we had issues with... I did have some people do some fill-in stuff for me, which I'll get to that in a second, and I do appreciate everyone who did do fill-in content. And we'll get that out there just because I just want to get those videos out there. But the Breeders' Cup preview series, unfortunately, is not going to happen this year. We'll get that next year, though. But also, one thing I do want to make an announcement. The person who did the fill-in video for me yesterday, Eric DeCoster, is now going to be permanently part of Racing Rundown. He is going to be my co-host on iTunes going forward. So, you'll still have me every week, but Eric will also be with me doing the podcast on iTunes. So, very, very excited for that. Not just iTunes, all the regular places where you can get the podcast out. And we're going to get those out onto YouTube, so the YouTube folk will be able to see them, as well as everyone else who's on our various other sites. You'll get Eric for some YouTube videos, and you'll get me for other YouTube videos. We're not going to collaborate as much on YouTube. I'll do some stuff, and Eric will do some stuff. That's the way it's going to work out, but very excited to bring Eric on here. So, get used to him. Anyway, with all that being mentioned, we obviously can't go into a Breeders' Cup without me making all my picks for the Breeders' Cup, and I was going to tweet them out anyway, but since we're not going to be able to have the individual breakdowns of all the races, I do just want to get a video out, quick one, for YouTube that will be up before tomorrow, so you'll be able to see it and digest it really quickly. I'll give all my picks for the 14 Breeders' Cup races, starting with the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. Now, I'm going to take an American horse in a juvenile grass race, which is not something that I'm going to usually do a lot, specifically in a male grass race. The females, I'll be more apt to take the Americans, but specifically in this race, I will be taking a male American horse on the grass for what is a rare occasion in the Breeders' Cup. Now, four-wheel drive has been a very good horse. He won the Futurity at Belmont, one of the win-in-your-ins for the Juvenile Turf Sprint, and I think he's a really, really solid young horse. I don't think he's anything super spectacular, but neither was Bulletin last year, and Bulletin was still able to win this Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint, or the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint last year, so I'm going to take four-wheel drive. Juvenile Fillies Turf, I'm going to go against my better judgment. There are some better horses in here, horses with more favorable odds, but I'm going to take Selflessly in the Juvenile Fillies Turf, and the reason I'm taking Selflessly is because of one reason, Chad Brown. He's won this race the last 3 years, and he's won 4 of the last 5 runnings. So Chad Brown has owned this race. He won this race last year with Newspaper of Record in 2017 with Rushing Fall, and many other horses, which we don't have time to go through on this video. But Chad Brown, like I mentioned, owned this race, so I will be taking Selflessly. Definitely not the biggest odds-wise pick, but Selflessly is trained by Chad Brown, and I like that a lot. In the Juvenile Fillies, I'm going to take Bast. Undefeated 2-year-old filly for trainer Bob Baffert. It just looks like everything's right for Bast. The fillies this year, not that they're bereft of talent, but I just like, excuse me, I just think that Bast is the best of all these fillies right now. I don't think that, if Perfect Alibi would have been able to win the Alcibiades, then I would have said Perfect Alibi would be up there with Bast. But I'll take Bast. She's just looked really good this year. Like I mentioned, excuse me, actually, she's not undefeated. She lost her maiden race, but off of consecutive Grade 1 wins in the Del Mar Debutante and the Chandelier. So give me Bast in this race. In the Juvenile Turf, I'm going to take Arizona for Aiden O'Brien. And I'm just going to touch on this really quickly. I think it's kind of ironic. Arizona's the second best European juvenile, and he's going to come over here. He's going to win the Breeders' Cup turf, or juvenile turf. And he's not the best 2-year-old in the world, but you know he'll come over here. He'll get a break in competition. I really think that Arizona's probably my lock for this Friday. I'll get to my lock for this Saturday, but Arizona's probably the horse that I feel has the strongest case to win this. I'm not bothered by the 12 post, really, for Arizona. And the last of the Friday races is the Breeders' Cup Juvenile with Dennis's Moment. I'm going to take him. 1 post is a bit scary for me, but I've been getting texts and hearing things all week from people out here talking about how impressive Dennis's Moment has looked all year. 1 post is a bit concerning, and you'll notice that that's a common theme with a lot of these favorites. A lot of favorites got stuck on the rail, which I don't love, but you got to take the hand that you're dealt, and I think that Dennis's Moment is really good. He's going to have to beat a really, really good California horse, though. 8 rings for trainer Bob Baffert. Is on his home soil, so but I'll take Dennis's Moment. Going on to Saturday morning, I will take Kofefi, the 3-year-old filly. A 3-year-old filly finally did win the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint last year. Shamrock Rose was the first one to do it. I'm going to take Kofefi to be the second one to do it. Number 1 post is was a bit apprehensive to take her in this, but when Kofefi is right, which you saw in the test stakes and you saw in the Dogwood, Kofefi is really, really tough to beat. And I think she's going to be right in this Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. And when she's right, as Jay Pribbin said on this show, she is really, really hard to beat. I'll take Final Frontier in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. I was expecting to have World of Trouble in this race. Unfortunately, he will not be competing in the Breeders' Cup this year. Stormy Liberal has not returned to the horse that he was last year. I will take Final Frontier in what is a very wide open Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. I wouldn't be surprised if Stormy Liberal comes back to win it, but I'll take Final Frontier. I don't feel strongly about him. I feel a lot more comfortable about some of my other picks, but I will be taking Final Frontier in this race. But it's a wide open Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. The Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, I'm going to take Omaha Beach. This horse won the Arkansas Derby, was the favorite for the Kentucky Derby, probably would have won it, and then had the 6-month layoff. Last start in the Santa Anita Sprint Championship, beat a very, very good 3-year-old sprinter. Chancelot stretches out to a mile. Mile is well within Omaha Beach's capabilities, and I'm going to take him for Richard Mandela. Mike Smith get another Breeders' Cup win. Mike Smith looking to get that 30th Breeders' Cup win this week, and I think he has a good shot to do it. I'm not going to guarantee that he's going to do it, but I think Mike Smith has a good chance to get that 30th Breeders' Cup win. The Filly and Mare Turf, I'm going to take the only repeat champion that we're going to have this year. Sister Charlie won the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf last year. I'm going to take her to do it again. There are some pretty good Europeans in this race, but I really, really like Sister Charlie. Sister Charlie is probably my most confident play for tomorrow, or for Saturday. The Breeders' Cup Sprint, I will take Maitoli. Maitoli has been the best sprinter all year. He also won the Met Mile in a race where McKinsey was severely, severely hampered by traffic conditions. Maitoli's best running style is in the sprint. He's going to have to beat a very, very loaded Breeders' Cup Breeders' Cup sprint field, but I think he has it in him to do it. Same thing with Got Stormy. Got Stormy won the 4-star Dave. She's my pick for the Breeders' Cup Mile. She lost her last start out in the Woodbine Mile, but I have confidence in her to rebound off of that. She's going to have to beat a really, really good horse, Uni, to do it, but I'll take her to do it. And going on to the Distaff, probably the number, I think, is probably the best. I don't want to say the best pick, but probably the, you could say the shoe-in for this weekend is Midnight Bisou. Breeders' Cup Distaff would cap off a perfect season for her, in a season she's going to try to win Horse of the Year. There's really not much here. You know, the female division this year, aside from Midnight Bisou, has not really been that good, and I don't think anyone in this race really is going to step up and beat her. Another horse that has had a really outstanding year that's going to try to cap it off in a Breeders' Cup win, Bricks and Mortar. He's not going to have to deal with a contingency from Europe, as I had been fearing he would have to deal with all year. I will take Bricks and Mortar in the turf. And finally, Breeders' Cup Classic, I'm going to take Yoshida and Mike Smith. I really, really like Yoshida with Mike Smith. It's not that I love Yoshida. I like the fact that he picks up Mike Smith in this race. So those are my picks for the Breeders' Cup. Again, the Turf Sprint, four-wheel drive, Selflessly Juvenile Fillies Turf, Bast in the Juvenile Fillies, Arizona Juvenile Turf, Dennis's Moment in the Juvenile, Covfefe in the Filly and Mare Sprint, Final Frontier in the Turf Sprint, Omaha Beach in the Dirt Mile, Sister Charlie in the Filly and Mare Turf, Maitoli in the Sprint, Got Stormy in the Mile, Midnight Bisou in the Distaff, Bricks and Mortar in the Turf, and Yoshida in the Classic. I will see you sometime this weekend. I don't really know how live watches are going to work, but we're going to have some live stuff at some point on Breeders' Cup weekend, whether it's actually watching some races live as they happen or following the Breeders' Cup. That will be determined going forward. So I will see you whenever we get that. And also, we're going to have Travis Stone on next week to break down the winners and losers from Breeders' Cup weekend. So good luck with your picks, and we'll see you then.
Look. Now moves up right alongside after 3/4 in 108.36 and grabs the front. Got Stormy is finishing fast. March to the Arch is charging in. Uni is too. But as they come to the final 16th, Got Stormy has taken the lead. And Got Stormy, the filly did it.